cancer is a systemic event. It exists throughout your whole body. So there are cancer cells that are kept in check by the immune system throughout your whole body, even though you may only see the tumor on the imaging in one location. So what we don't want to see happen then is that when you go through that surgery and you get rid of that tumor, we don't want to open up the door for cancer cells in other locations to be able to set up shop elsewhere. And so that's why exactly the tools that you're talking about is so important to do ahead of time and then also post-surgery so that we can really keep that immune system upregulated. Well, I am so pleased to have my dear friend, Dr. V, with me here today. We co-authored an amazing book. I'm so thrilled to get it out and get it into the hands of people. It's going to be such a powerful tool. Dr. Veronique, thank you so much for being with me here today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been a project that we've both worked on for a while, and it's like birthing a baby, right? You work on it, and here we are. So October 15th is the official launch date, so we'll make sure that everybody knows about it. I know our books have been #1 sellers, so we expect the same from this one. So very excited about the information that we're going to have in the book, and maybe I can give you a sneak peek of what the book cover is going to look like. So there you have it.
This is amazing. Look at that. It looks breast cancer breakthrough, integrated conventional and natural medicine for true healing. And following the seven essential system, for beating breast cancer, and the beauty is obviously here we are, because so many people they are navigating that space, regards to natural medicine, and then also we are dealing with the conventional medicine as well. And every person, that we're dealing with, they're somewhere on that spectrum, and yes, there's a group, that are really they just want to do the natural aspect, but we're seeing obviously that we need to support the people that want to be on the other part of the spectrum, and there's so many tools out there.
Absolutely. And, when I started my journey with Breast Cancer Conqueror and started coaching women, my focus was healing breast cancer naturally, because that's what I did. But as I matured as a coach, I realized that so many women were having surgery and doing chemo and radiation, not necessarily because that was their first choice. Sometimes it came as, kind of a last resort, or sometimes they always wanted to choose that. That's what they felt comfortable with. But to be able to support them with natural medicine as they go through that process, the research shows us that they do much, much better. So we're very excited. Both of us are very excited about this information that's going to reach a lot of women. So we're excited.
Yeah, and the challenge a lot of people are facing, or I wouldn't say challenge, it's more kind of a misconception in a way that if you do traditional oncology care, that you have to put natural medicine on pause. And that actually is a huge disservice for the individual, because when you bring them together, it becomes, it's a very powerful, synchronized, effective treatment, and really enhance the traditional oncology versus subtract from it.
Totally. And if your oncologist tells you natural medicine doesn't work, or don't take antioxidants with chemo because it's going to neutralize the effects, or radiation, they just have not taken the time, or perhaps don't have the time, to look at the research. And it's out there, and it's been out there for many, many years. And it's hands down that people who do an integrative approach do much better than those who just do conventional, or even sometimes who just do natural. It's important to marry the two at times.
And that's the thing. Each individual is so unique, and they are all on kind of a different spots in their cancer journey. So it's finding that balance in the tools that you're using, depending on where you're at, and that's obviously. That's why we wrote the books, so people can feel empowered and know of the tools that are available. And then also the work that's being done then through Breast Cancer Conqueror to have people kind of guide you through as to what is the appropriate natural tools and that will very well go along with the traditional oncology care that an individual is choosing to do.
Definitely, definitely. And, when I went through my healing journeys, I always had coaches. I had doctors, I had therapists, I had, all kinds of help. I put a team together because, when you're in the thick of it, sometimes you can't really see the forest through the trees. So you need somebody to guide you. And I'm just so proud of the coaching team that we have. I mean, they've touched the lives of so many women, and, we have such wonderful testimonials and great results. That's the most important thing, right? When you can see lives turned around and families reunited and happy because, the health was restored. And so it's a very fulfilling thing to see. Now, Dr. Karlfeldt, I mean, you have a beautiful integrative clinic there. And I know you've seen thousands of patients over the years. So when somebody comes to you and they're perhaps, I won't use the word, let's see, they're discouraged, or they've lost hope, or they've been given no hope. What's the best approach? Like, how do you approach these people to give them hope? And what do you do for them at your clinic?
Well, and the thing is that when you hear the word cancer, it is scary. It sounds scary, and a lot of times we equate it with a not a very good outcome. But as science has evolved, as natural medicine have evolved, there's so much hope that is available. Because there's so many amazing tools that are there. So when an individual comes into my clinic and they might have gone through an extensive traditional oncology journey already, and they've gotten to the point where they're not responding, and maybe even it has ended up in other areas, like in the lungs or in the liver or maybe in the bones or sometimes even in the brain. It is really scary, and then. So what people don't recognize that there is when the traditional oncology, the medical system are saying that all we can do is kind of try to manage this as much as possible. They take them for that word, thinking that is the only thing that's possible to do, not recognizing the tremendous healing power, that God-given healing power that exists within us. That if we start to then fuel that innate intelligence that we have, and these are then adding tools that traditional oncologists they really don't understand, and they don't understand that they exist, and they don't understand the power of them. And so by bringing in that extra toolbox, there's so much more that can be done when a patient then feel like, I'm at the end of my rope, and I have a hard time eating, or I'm in pain, or I'm exhausted, or whatever it may be. There's so much more that can be done, and to kind of build up the vitality, the immune system of that person, and start to get the different other systems on track. Working on the detoxification, working on regeneration, and start to shift your focus towards optimizing your health rather than continually just chasing the cancer. And there's so much you can do in that area when they come to me.
Yeah, and the tools that you have there are really state of the art and cutting edge therapies, and it's amazing, what you've put together. So I know just from talking to some of your patients and sending our clients there, how everybody's really, impressed and very grateful that there's a clinic like that exists in the United States. They don't have to leave the country.
And that's the thing, is that people think that things like vitamin B17 IVs, or a lot of the therapies, the photodynamic therapy that we do, that you have to leave the country in order to be able to access to them. And that is not correct. We do offer that here in the United States. And that is nice to have kind of a safe place here in Idaho that's easy to access, where you can then offer these type of therapies.
Absolutely. So let's say one of our clients or patients are getting ready to have surgery. They've decided that the tumor is just grown out of control and they need to have surgery. And one of the things that I went through as we were putting this program together and putting a more integrative approach is I did a lot of research. It took me 3 years to really put this information together. And there are so many things that we can do beforehand to prepare our body, whether it's chemo, radiation, or surgery. And, with surgery, it's kind of a two-edged sword, right? It's good in the fact that sometimes you have to remove the tumor because it's growing out of control. But at the same time, we know that surgery can cause immune suppression. It can cause, the spread of the cancer cells in the body. But the good news is that if you prepare your body ahead of time, where you boost your immune system, your natural killer cells, you prepare yourself emotionally, because it is very traumatic. And you can even, when it comes to breast cancer, I know some of our clients have done this, rather than going under general anesthetic, they can do a spinal a spinal injection that numbs the thoracic area that affects the breast. And they'll put you under light sedation, twilight. So, because we know that anesthesia can really suppress the immune system as well. And the results are so much better because you're not suppressing your immune system. You come out of it, you're not, drugged up from the anesthesia. A lot of times there's less pain. And there's so many things that you can add nutritionally to boost your immune system, like the curcumin and high dose melatonin, making sure your vitamin D is really high, doing vitamin C IVs. There's all these things that you can put together to make surgery a very positive experience. So.
Yeah, and that's people don't. This is probably one of the misunderstood concepts. The importance of preparing yourself for the surgery and not recognizing the impact surgery will have on your body, because here you're doing something that creates a huge stress on the body. And with that stress, and then like you're saying, it's very immunosuppressive. And the last thing we want to do is obviously to have kind of the immune system down for a moment, because yes, we are removing the tumor, but cancer is a systemic event. It exists throughout your whole body. So there are cancer cells that are kept in check by the immune system throughout your whole body, even though you may only see the tumor on the imaging and one location. So what we don't want to see happen then is that when you go through that surgery and you get rid of that tumor, we don't want to open up the door for cancer cells in other locations to be able to set up shop elsewhere. And so that's why exactly the tools that you're talking about is so important to do ahead of time, and then also post-surgery, so that we can really keep that immune system upregulated. And then we have the issue of inflammation. Mm-hmm. We all need inflammation in order to be able to heal tissue. But but we also know that cancer feeds on inflammation. It really, all the different inflammatory drivers actually promote cancer's existence. So like you were talking about curcumin, to be able to control that inflammation pre and post surgery, becomes so important, because otherwise, one, then, we have the emotional stress, then we have the immunosuppression, and then we have the increased level of inflammation, and it kind of sets you up for a therapy or for failure in a way. And we don't want that. We want to, when we do something that big, we want to really optimize the result from that.
Totally. That just made me think. I was at the grocery store today, and there was a woman who had a sticker on the back of her car, and it had a pink ribbon on it. So I went closer to look at it. She said, "Make sure you check your breasts carefully because mine tried to kill me." It's like, that's the mentality, right? They just don't think past that. And so, as we mentioned, there's just so much that you can do. And one thing too is like modified citrus pectin. That's definitely something that we recommend to all our clients all the time, because it makes cancer cells less sticky. So it doesn't have the opportunity to stick somewhere and cause metastasis. And that's been proven in clinical studies. And it's a great heavy metal detoxer as well. So all kinds of tools in that toolbox. So how about if anything else on surgery?
In regards to the anesthesia also, I mean, what they have found, that when you are kind of completely knocked out and you're going through a traumatic experience, that it's harder, it gets more kind of hardwired into you. So if you have the option to not be completely knocked out with anesthesia, and it's more kind of like a spinal block where you're kind of blocking that area that's being that they're working on, you're then able to process those emotions, that trauma, much better. If you are able to be present when it's taking place. So I think that component is kind of an interesting one as well.
Yeah, very much so. So let's talk about chemotherapy. Not our favorite topic, but sometimes, to put the fire out, sometimes it works. But again, it's one of those things where you don't have to go into it blindly. And even if your option is that you want to do chemotherapy because that's what you feel is right for you, we want to look at it as a healing elixir, not something that's going to be toxic and poisonous to you. But there's testing that you can do. There's something called pharmacogenomics, which will look at your DNA to see what your body and liver can handle, because sometimes women just can't process those toxins, and it makes them really, really sick. There's also a test called RGCC that looks at your circulating tumor cells, and it tests different chemotherapy agents or natural agents to see what's most effective for you and your cancer cells. So it takes a lot of the guesswork out of the treatments that you choose, because let's face it, it's pretty much cookie cutter, right? You have breast cancer, this kind, you do this, this, and this. But if you can tailor your treatment to something that's easier on your body and more beneficial in the long run, then why wouldn't you opt for that? But that's why we have this book, so we can teach people about that and let them know that they have those options.
Yeah, because it is a confusing journey, because you like you mentioned earlier, you get the messaging from the oncologist saying that, can you just please hold off from those other therapies, let me do my thing, and then you can start whatever you want to start after we're done. And like I mentioned, it's the outcome is not going to be as optimum. And there's so much research in regards to the different chemotherapeutic drugs and using the natural agents to really enhance the effect of the chemo, because cancer cells, they do have protective mechanisms because they don't like chemo, and so they're going to try to spit it out, and they're going to try to go dormant. They have all these different defense mechanisms that they utilize. And we want to make the cancer cells as vulnerable to the chemo as possible. And that's the beauty of a lot of these natural agents, is that we're able to do that. And then also combining that with, a certain way of eating and certain lifestyle, and also certain mindset, like you're saying, if you then choose to do chemo, and that is what is the appropriate thing to do at the time, then you don't want to be in that mindset where, I'm getting this thing that I want to reject, and I dislike, this nasty stuff that's going into me. We want to really optimize, that therapy, and your mindset, how you think about it becomes really important. But then, bringing in tools, like quercetin, for instance, there's a process called chemotaxis, like I said, where the cancer cells actually spit out the chemo, as you are, infusing it. And so the cancer cells then spit it out, and then the healthy cells, they are the ones that get the brunt of it. And obviously, we don't want the cancer cells to have it. We want the chemo to have, or the cancer. We don't want the healthy cells to have it. We want the cancer cells to have it. So just by bringing in something like quercetin, for instance, it will then reduce the cancer cell's ability to spit it out. And so, some studies have shown that it increases actually the uptake by 30%, which is huge.
Wow.
Yeah.
And even not taking anything and not eating, fasting for 48 hours before, during, and if you can, another 12 to 48 hours afterwards, because the cancer cells are starving. So they're going to gobble up that chemo, and, there's nothing else for them to feed on. And they've shown that women who fast do much, much better. They have fewer side effects and better results that the chemo is doing on the cancer. So
yeah, and that's, and the tools like this, it's so important to really know that they exist. So what happens is that the cancer cells, they are so metabolically hungry. They are because they are dividing so fast, and so they are not very efficient in how they burn energy. So they are continually just gobbling up whatever they can. Mm-hmm. So if we then, fast prior to chemo, then the cancer cells, they go into panic mode, and they're thinking we got to open up all possible doors, because we are starving right now. So anything that's coming towards us, we're going to need for fuel and for energy, because otherwise we'll be dying, because we are burning through fuel so fast. And so if we then starve, not starve, we don't starve, but we want the cancer cells to starve. If we then fast prior to, then we put the cancer cells in that state, like you're saying, and they just kind of suck up. There's so much more chemo. But the beauty is with the healthy cells that are able to then kind of function in a scarcity type of situation, they then actually hunker down and slow down their metabolism, and they become more protected against the chemo. So it actually impacts your healthy cells much less, and the cancer cells so much more. And we have huge amount of research that's done on that. One of the leaders in that field is Professor Walter Longo. And so it's really amazing how we are moving forward with that. And you talked about RGCC, which is phenomenal, where you can then actually identify, which chemo would be the most effective in regards to your type of cancer or circulating tumor cells. And obviously, the challenge is if you just work with a traditional oncologist, they just want to go through the motion, so to say. But if you find somebody that is a little bit more open and willing to then use a little bit more of a kind of an unconventional way of using chemo, then that becomes a really powerful tool to be more specific in what you're choosing as a chemo agent.
Absolutely. We're talking a lot about fasting and a metabolic approach, and how our body is just a beautiful, wonderfully made healing machine. We're so grateful that we have this miracle of a body that can withstand all of this. That made me think about radiation treatments. I know I interviewed Dr. Nasha Winters, I don't know, maybe a year or two ago, and we were talking specifically about radiation. And she brought out some very interesting points. She said, one of the key factors when you're going through radiation treatment is to make sure that you're not insulin resistant, that you're metabolically flexible. Because if you break that cycle, let's say, and you binge on ice cream or whatever else, and your blood sugar tends to go high, you're really reducing the effects of the radiation. So if you keep your blood sugar at a nice lower level, and you're not insulin resistant, you're not pre-diabetic, your blood sugars are good, that radiation is going to be much more effective long term. And that radiation treatment actually lasts for 6 months. So even though it may be just a period of 5-6 weeks, if you have to maintain that good insulin resistance for at least 6 months, because that radiation is still doing its work.
Yeah, and yes, see, that is so important that people, they go through, obviously radiation or chemo or whatever it may be is a very stressful event to do. And frequently you have the nurses, the oncology nurses, or the oncologists that say we just need you to keep weight on, and so just eat whatever high calorie, eat ice cream, eat this and that, and not recognizing that when you do that, then their therapies are working less, and and the radiation obviously is one of those things. And so to be metabolically flexible, to be able to kind of shift into that ketogenic state where you're not allowing the cancer cells to feed on their on their fuel of choice, which is sugar, then the radiation is going to have so much more kill than if you are continually supporting the cancer cells and feeding it. So it's kind of like you're trying to feed what you're killing, and that's not a good strategy. It's better to starve and kill at the same time, and you're going to get much more effect.
Absolutely. And, they unfortunately, they won't tell their patients to protect their thyroid. Make sure you have high levels of iodine, through your body, because iodine is antiviral, antibacterial, anti-cancer. So we've got to make sure our iodine levels are nice and high. And, something as simple as miso soup, they found during World War II, after America bombed with radiation, the Japanese, that those who still had access to their miso soup, even within a kilometer of the bomb blast, they had fewer radiation side effects. And come to find out that the bacteria that ferments the paste binds the radiation and expels it from the body. So something as simple as miso soup can help you, making sure that you're getting plenty of flax, ground flax, because they've shown that, if you're getting radiation on your breast, it's going to affect your lungs inevitably, right? But they found that ground flaxseed actually help to reduce the side effects of the radiation to the lungs, protecting your heart with things like hawthorn berries and pomegranate juice and things like that. So you can be very proactive while you're getting your treatments, and not just wait for them to tell you something, because they don't know these things, right?
And you have, one of the things that's really important for the radiation delivery is that you want to be able to have circulation. And so niacinamide becomes a really powerful tool, while doing radiation. And then also, in order to, and radiation is an oxidative type of therapy, just like chemo. And so obviously, in order to be able to oxidize the cancer cells, you need oxygen. So, bringing things in like, ozone IV or hyperbaric oxygen therapy or, other therapies that we have in addition to that here becomes really, really powerful to really also increase the kill. But then at the same time, you're then supporting healthy tissue so that they can handle radiation much better without the destructive effect then on the healthy tissue. Yeah, so it's that kind of balance where you want to increase the kill on the cancer cells, but then recognizing that we have more healthy cells than cancer cells, and we want to give them the nutrition, want to give them the support so that they can handle the stress of whatever therapy we're doing without then impacting in a negative way the therapy on the cancer cells.
And as you were talking there, Dr. Karlfeldt, it just made me think of, anybody out there who's listening to this. If you felt hopeless before you listened to this podcast, I mean, you should be full of hope right now. It made me excited because it made me, it's just like one of those moments like, wow, we have so many things to offer. And that's why I'm really happy and excited about the fact that we're going to be sharing all this information in our book that's going to be coming out here in less than a month. So
it's so exciting. And the thing is that we are, in the book, so they're common chemo agents that when you go through your breast cancer journey that are being presented to you. So we're going through, what chemo agent and then what natural supplements, you can use in order to be able to, minimize the negative effect and also the enhance the cancer killing effect of that specific chemo agent. So we even put it together in combination. So if you do these three chemo agents in combination, what are some of the tools? What should a program look like? So it really is a manual, a guide that you can utilize, when you go through your journey. Obviously, it does not take away the need for having a provider, or it is also, in addition to that, it is great to have a coach, to help you to navigate that. So that's why I feel that doing, having the book in front of you, you can see the research and the and what's available, and then having a coach to support you through that journey, and then also a provider, like someone like myself, to have some of the stronger therapies that is available.
And what's really beautiful about this book, and one of the things I'm really proud of, is, once it's divided into 4 sections. One is about, breast cancer in general and preparing yourself for the journey. Then the next section is diving into the 7 essential system, which is what we've used for many, many years to guide women in their healing journey. The third section is about incorporating the 2. Your section, the 4th section, which I really enjoyed learning as I went through it, you look at it from a clinical aspect, which I don't have that clinical aspect, the hands-on approach. And you have so much experience in that kind of work with the chemos and what can go with it and what can't. And it just lays everything out so beautifully. So for those of you that are going through a healing journey and maybe you're at a crossroads right now, I mean, this is a wonderful tool that I know many, many women will benefit from.
Yeah. And the thing is that when you go on this journey, as you choose to incorporate then traditional oncology, you don't want to throw out the basic principles. They need to be part of that throughout. Again, it's not an either or. It is that it's an add-on. You add all of these things together. So the 7 essentials are so fundamental and so foundational. And to make sure that you have those, as you go through this, becomes really, really important. And then you lay on top of that, these different tools that we highlight in regards to, depending on what kind of where you're at in your traditional oncology journey. Whether you're going through radiation or surgery or chemo, or if you're post, any of those therapies, then you layer on top of that knowledge that we bring in this book, on the 7 essential system.
Yeah, it's very, very powerful. Excuse me, and I'm glad that you reinforce that, because you can do all the therapies in the world, but if you haven't addressed the dental issues or the emotional issues or your eating habits or your exercise habits, I mean, these are all things that go together to be able to create, you want to move towards health, even though you're working, with dis-ease in your body. The goal is to get you towards health. And that's what the 7 essentials takes you through, right? But then you have the benefit of adding all these therapies as well. So it's a win-win situation.
And with Breast Cancer Conqueror that you started, I mean, you're reaching hundreds of thousands of women that are on their breast cancer journey, either during or they may be post, and so you've had the ability to really impact so many people and see that by implementing this strategy, people do better. Women do better, and they're healing better. They're whatever they're choosing in regards to traditional oncology route, their outcome is always so much better.
Absolutely. And I know you've seen it and I've seen it. Even when we look at women in stage 4 metastasis and the doctors say there's no hope, there's nothing they can do, but lo and behold, 6 months later, they're up and going, and their body's in the healing mode, and they go into the phase where there's no evidence of cancer. They're not actively cancering, and then they can really, from there, even build even more so on maintaining that health going forward.
Yeah, and the beauty is exactly what you're saying, is that by implementing these and also recognizing that these foundational principles that maybe, yes, you won't see a tumor shrink immediately, but what we're doing is that by implementing the foundational principles, we are changing the terrain in the body, and we're changing the reason why the cancer existed. Because cancer doesn't just show up because there's always a reason, there's always a driver. And then by methodically going through the different areas that needs to be addressed, we're then shifting the terrain in such a way so that cancer has a much harder time to express itself in that body, and the immune system is upregulated and becomes more intelligent, and also inflammation goes down, nutritional content goes up, and the emotional journey that may have been one of the drivers, whether it's trauma or belief system, that is looked upon as well. So you don't go through all these harsh therapies, and then, yes, you have that moment of no evidence of disease, but you haven't addressed the root causes, the underlying factors. So, and they are still kind of that smoldering underneath, kind of like that fire that you think it's extinguished, but it's kind of smoldering underneath. And then once you stop then the harsh therapies, then it expresses itself again. And that is the worst thing. I mean, when you're going through harsh chemo, the last thing we want to do is to go through it again. Right. So by combining these things and addressing the root causes while then kind of hitting it hard sometimes with traditional oncology is so important.
It is. It really is. So that's why this book coming out October 15th is going to be a real blessing for countless women. And I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity to work with you, Dr. Karlfeldt, on this. It's been an exciting project, and ready to put it out there and share it with the world.
I'm so excited. It's such an honor to get to write this book with you, and I'm so thrilled to see what kind of impact that's going to have on people going through their journeys. And like you said, I mean, your prior books, they hit number one. And I know my book, A Better Way to Treat Cancer, also hit number one. And here we're combining our experience and our training and targeting then breast cancer and writing a manual for women, as they journey through this.
Yeah, it's very, very exciting. So thank you for your time, Dr. K, and look forward. I'm sure we'll be in touch as we go through the next
so
part.
And where can, I mean, I assume people can, it's just going to be on Amazon. It's going to be on all the different outlets. And then obviously you can go to, breastcancerconqueror.com. You'll have more information. And if are you listening to this and you're not on the email list, make sure to go on to breastcancerconqueror.com and put yourself so you can get the newsletters and get the information. Because there's so much information just there by itself. But then also, so that you can get this book when it's hot off the press.
Yes, and you'll have cases of them in your clinic.
I will have lots of them in my clinic. Yes.
All right. Good to see you, Dr. K.
Thanks so much, Dr. V. It's always a pleasure.